Welcome to the Energy and Hours podcast, formerly called the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I'm your host, Jill Wright, author of Happy, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, and creator of the Time Magic Seasonal Planner. On this podcast, we talk about time and energy management tips that we can use to flow through our day in a way that feels more aligned. We focus a lot on how to use cyclical energy, seasonal cycles. We talk about productivity. We talk about self-care. We talk about rest. It all comes together in what I like to say is time magic. And if you tune into these episodes week after week, you're going to get a half an hour punch of tools, tips, and strategy advice for you to go and implement right away in your day to make your life feel a little bit more like you and a little bit less stressful. Welcome back to Energy and Hours. I have Laura Vanderkam with me today. Laura is the author of several time management and productivity books, including the upcoming Big Time, A Simple Path to Time Abundance, which is being released right about now as you are listening to this. She's also the author of Tranquility by Tuesday, Juliet's School of Possibilities, Off the Clock, I Know How She Does It, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, and I think my favorite, 168 Hours. Her work has appeared in publications including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, and Fortune. She's the host of the podcast Before Breakfast and co-host with Sarah Hart Unger of the podcast Best of Both Worlds. Laura lives outside Philly with her husband and 5 kids. I'm almost caught up. I have 4. And you can find her work at her website, which is lauravanderkam.com. Today is really exciting because we're talking about her new book, and I'm a big fan. If you've listened to this podcast before, you'll know that I reference Laura's work often, and so it's very cool to have her on here to talk about it sort of straight from the horse's mouth, if you will. This new book is about the idea of being time abundant, and I really love this perspective. I share it often with my clients, this idea of shifting our perspective away from time being a foe to more of like being a friend, Laura, as you say in your book. And so I want to dive into all the pieces of it today, but first and foremost, just welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. I think we're going to be able to, in even a short amount of time, go through some of these major concepts that you've outlined in your book and that are prevalent in a lot of the work that you teach. You start the book by acknowledging that time management as a topic doesn't inspire universal affection, which is so funny because the way that I say that is like time management is not sexy. It's the same thing that we're both saying. It's just time isn't the enemy and time management can be fun. Maybe not actually fun, but certainly less negative and scary than most people and the media make it out to be. And I'm curious to know when you're doing this work and you're encountering people out in the wild, do you generally find that people have sort of a negative or sort of boundaried view when you come to talking about time management?
I think people come at it one of two ways. Sometimes people are like, oh, I'm so terrible at that. I need all the help I can get. I'm like, okay, well, you're here. It's probably not that bad. But other times people are sort of like, I don't know, that we've moved beyond that. I don't know, that somehow like forces beyond our will are in charge of time and it's all just a, I don't know, capitalist plot or something like that. And, I don't think that's really the way to view it either. I think, time is a tool. We can use it to do amazing things. We can use it to do sort of pointless things too. I mean, it's all about what we choose to do with it. And so I kind of just approach it as, we can always do a little better than we're doing now, not with the goal of getting more things done, but of making lives that look more like we want them to look.
Yes. This is the crux of it, I think, right? It's like the goal isn't to be the best at time management. Nobody gets a gold star for being the best at time management. The goal is a spacious and aligned life, and time management is a tool to help you get there. And I feel like perspective is part of the problem. Like you say in the book, time management implies control over time, but life doesn't go according to plan. And I think people don't like not having control. Have you encountered that as well?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But I think this is a nuanced point because we have a tendency to go all one way or the other when we talk about it. Like sometimes people are like, oh, well, it's pointless to plan because life doesn't go as planned. I mean, that doesn't necessarily follow. Yes, life doesn't go as planned, but it still helps to plan. I mean, I always think about it like you plan 10 things and 8 of them happen. That's great. That's like 8 more than would have happened. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 of those things would have happened without your conscious intentional planning of them. So, 8 out of 10 isn't bad. I'll take it.
Yeah.
We can mourn the 2 that didn't happen, but that's probably not the right perspective to happen as well. So I am a big fan of planning. I am also a big fan of acknowledging that sometimes our plans have to change and we have to build a resilient schedule that allows for the reality of life not going according to plan.
Yeah. And I think that a big piece of the problem when people think about planning and sort of get paralyzed or get scared or stuck is that they don't feel like they have agency over their time. And one of the pieces that you've discovered through your research is that almost everyone has some amount of discretionary time. And actually, a lot of us have a great deal more than we think we do if we're willing to be organized and honest about it. And in your book, you go through a lot of really great ideas about how we can use time and shift our mindset about it to feel more abundant. And I wanted to kind of go through those in high level. So, the first thing that struck me is we kind of covered three different pillars or topics. The first was like the practical calendar stuff, right? And then you got us thinking about goal setting and achievement. And then you brought us home with these like happiness strategies and how time relates to happiness, which is something that I always found really interesting too. So let's start where you start in the book, which is the practical calendar stuff. The first suggestion that you have for us is to audit your schedule to see where your time is actually going.
And that sounds like not a lot of fun. I get it. I've actually been tracking my time for 11 years now. I began in April of 2015. I have tracked continuously since then. So I have a record of how I've spent every half hour for the past 11 years. Nobody else needs to do that. I'm a bit of a time management freak. But I promise it's not that difficult. Like tracking time, ideally for a week, will give you an incredible perspective on your life. And it is not about playing gotcha. It is not about like, oh, you thought you were busy and I see 2 hours of Netflix on there. Nobody cares. It's fine. We all waste time. I waste a ton of time. It's about seeing that we're not telling ourselves stories about our lives that aren't true. When it comes to time, people have all kinds of stories they tell themselves, not all of which are 100% accurate. And my general finding from having studied hundreds of people's schedules and actually having done a project of tracking people's time satisfaction through the course of tracking their time over the course of a week is that knowing where the time goes will actually make you feel better about your time because you will see that whatever negative stories you have been telling yourself are probably not as bad as you think. People don't tend to work around the clock. We may have had a bad night here and there, but a lot of people get enough sleep when you average it over the course of a week. People think they don't see their families. If you're living with your family, you're going to see your family. Your time log will show that. People say I have no free time whatsoever. Well, a time log will show you probably do have some. It may not be as much as you want, but you probably have some. I can't vouch for whether that time is spent well, but that is up to you. I mean, that's the nature of discretionary time, right? And so by knowing where the time goes, we can start to make intentional choices that allow us to create a mosaic of 168 hours that looks a little bit more like we'd like it to look.
And I love this perspective that you give us in that the cycle of a week is how we actually move through time. We don't necessarily move through time in 24 hours. We move through time in 168 hours of a week. And so it helps a lot if we're able to view it and think of it in this larger time block, but not too big. It's like it's the perfect amount.
A
Um,
week is really, yeah, it really is
yeah.
the perfect amount because if you think about the cycle of life as you're living it, things that happen regularly in life, you're like, yeah, that's what I do on Mondays. That's what I do on Thursdays. This is what my Saturdays tend to look like. A single day doesn't give you that. Like if I look at your life on Tuesday and I look at your life on Saturday, they tend to look quite different, but both of those days occur just as often. So we need a unit of time that encompasses them both. A week is short enough that we can plan with a high degree of certainty. It is big enough, though, that we can see how much space there is, because even people who are working full time, if you work 40 hours a week, that's not all of 168 hours. There's still many hours left over. And you can start to make some choices of what you want to do with them.
hmm Yeah. It's truly eye-opening when you look at the amount of hours you sleep or work or whatever out of that 168 and you realize, oh man, like This is actually looking a little bit more spacious. Time can hold this week, as you say in your book. Like it's big enough to hold it, right? And I love that. The second piece about this practical managing time, figuring out where it's going and how we're going to work with it is really about taking control and being that ringmaster of the circus, right? The tools and the mindset piece. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
When people say my life is a circus, they tend to mean that it is chaotic. But I believe that is a slander against circuses. Circuses are the most well organized performance you will ever see. No one is getting shot out of a cannon at the wrong time. Like if there are tigers leaping through hoops, they are leaping through hoops when they are supposed to be leaping through hoops. Somebody's juggling 8 things in the air. That is happening precisely when it is supposed to be happening. A circus is incredibly well organized. It is complex, but it is well organized. And so I think that is what we should aspire to in our lives. And I have this metaphor of thinking of ourselves as the ringmaster of our circus. And if you think of the circus of having 3 rings: career, relationships, and self. And there is activity in all 3, and you are monitoring all 3, and you're making sure all 3 things are happening with them, and moving toward your goals. And you are also making sure that you have a plan for when things go wrong. You know, that when acrobats are performing, they tend to perform over a net, and the net is, tested. It is where it is supposed to be. They have practiced falling into it. It is not an afterthought. And the same thing with our lives. If we want to have complex but orderly lives, we need systems for when things go wrong. We need backup plans. We need open space in order to create some resilience that allows us to keep moving toward our goals, even when life doesn't go as planned.
Yeah. That key point stuck with me in such a strong way. It's like complexity isn't the enemy, chaos is. And it's okay. It gives us permission for people who are like high performers, high achievers, ambitious people who have lots of interests. We can often feel, I think, excluded in this slow productivity movement. Like it almost gives us this feeling of like, don't do as much. And that's not the message here. The message is like, have a beautiful, complex life that looks whatever you want it to look like. But the way that you make that manageable is by planning for it.
So,
And
yeah,
yeah.
some people's lives are just naturally more complex than others. I mean, you have a lot of kids, as do I. I mean, 5 kids is not minimal. Like there's no approach to like there's no minimalist approach that can accommodate the fact that I have like 5 kids, all of whom have their own interests and need to go various places. There are things I can do to make it easier on me and the rest of my family. There are things I can do to make it more orderly. But the truth of the matter is it's a lot of people. And that's the case for anyone who has sort of, jobs that have multiple moving parts. So you think about somebody who's like a high school principal. Like, what does it even mean to be minimalist in that context where you have stuff going on in the evenings, like different sporting events, like, you're managing dozens of teachers and, parents coming to you and all this stuff. Like, there's so many people's lives that are just structurally complex. And so if the advice they're hearing is like, pare back, make it simple, make it minimal, it's like, well, you can't. And so if you have a lot of moving parts, you just have to figure out how to make the moving parts work, and systems that make it orderly, and people going where they're supposed to go when they are supposed to go, systems for when things go wrong. It will work. So it doesn't need to be simple, it just has to be orderly.
Yeah, and these like repeatable systems that can reduce the mental load. Because I think half of the problem with people feeling frazzled about their time is the mental load. And if we can create systems and processes and plan ahead and plan for the curveballs, that helps with that mental load. And
It really does. I mean, just I've lost track of how many times I've had people, tell me about they're looking for the great meal planning system or something. And I'm like, okay, among the things I do not do in life is the great meal planning system. And yet somehow we all eat. Nobody has starved yet. Reasonably healthy diet. Like there's all sorts of repeatable systems to make things a little bit more easy. And, I love learning about what different people do in that regard.
yeah. Yeah. It's funny because we're also unique. And that's one of the things that I preach about so often is that we need to personalize things based on what's actually going to work for us. Because you can get all the good advice in the world or from Google or from Laura's books or whatever. And if it doesn't suit you in your season of life in this moment, like it's not going to work. And then you're going to feel down and all the things. But this sort of brings me into my next my next piece is this idea of like, well, what are your goals? And how do we dream big but plan small? Because if we give ourselves a chance to sit down and think about it, we all have an idea of what we'd really like life to look like and feel like. And that can feel impossible, but you have a better way for us.
I think that dreaming big and planning small is really kind of the secret of how stuff gets done. Um, Whatever big goal you have, it becomes more doable if you stretch it over a longer period of time and break it down into smaller steps. So, one example I use in my book is reading War and Peace. Now, you hear War and Peace and you think big book. It is a very big book. It's like, almost 1,500 pages in the version I have. But it turns out that War and Peace is comprised of 361 extremely short chapters. They're about 3-4 pages a piece. Takes less than 10 minutes to read a chapter. So what I did is I read it over the course of a year. So one chapter a day, every day, through a year, just a couple minutes a day. But, December 27th, I finished. That gets us to 361 chapters. And when you put big things into your life like that, it's just this incredible sense of accomplishment. You cannot feel starved for time if you are the kind of person who can read War and Peace. Like those two stories don't work together. Like, oh, I have no time whatsoever, and I managed to read War and Peace in my spare time. Now, we don't need to like tell our brains like, oh yeah, because it was just a few minutes a day and it was spread over a longer period of time. But anything is like that, like any project you might have. And I think that's more natural with stuff like athletic goals. I mean, most people, if you've ever decided to like train for a marathon and you pull up a marathon training plan, it does not have you running 26 miles tomorrow. It's like spread out over 4 or 5 months, and you build up each week. You do more and more, and you have like, okay, you have to do these 4 runs this week. This is the amount of time they'll take. Where can you put that in your schedule? It is the same for anything else. You dream big, you plan small, you break the big goal into very small, doable chunks that work in your life as it is or reasonably could be. You just keep going and you will get there.
Hmm. And achieving our goals is something that makes us happy. Like we get a sense of satisfaction. And so if we're able to figure out a way to make that work in our schedule and shift our perspective around it, it can be hugely rewarding. And there's a lot of other happiness strategies that you talk about in your book too. One of them, which I really loved, was the blueprint for a better workday. Like how do we stop wishing time away? Can you break that one down for us?
Yeah, it's always funny to me. People feel like time is scarce, and yet we're sitting there in that 2 p.m. staff meeting wishing that the minute hand on the clock is moving faster than it actually is, which is also interesting to me because a lot of people say, like, if you ask people if they like their jobs, most people will say they like them a reasonable amount, which makes sense. We're in a free market. You could go find something else if you hate it. So, yet if you look at how people are experiencing moment by moment during their workday, they're often not terribly happy in the course of their actual work days. So, what we need to do is find ways for people to be happier in the moment as they're going through their work days. And so I have a couple strategies that, I think work broadly in a great number of different careers, not just office jobs, but other things too. Um, and that I tested out on hundreds of people and had them, try it out over a couple of weeks and report back on how they're doing. And among them was, spending a little bit more time on the work you actually like. Like there is some reason you applied for this job in the first place. There's some reason you took it. What is the thing you like best about this job? And if you can slightly increase the amount of time that you spend on it, you will be happier. Another thing is spending more time with a work friend. So even if there's very little about your job itself you like, you probably like some of your colleagues. Friendships are built over repeated relaxed time spent together. It's cumulative, so everything you can throw at it is good. Will make work feel like, hey, I'm hanging out with somebody that I would hang out with on nights and weekends, but I'm doing it while on the clock. How awesome is that? So spending more time with a work friend. And finally, being more intentional about your work breaks. Because even when we don't have a ton of discretionary time in our jobs, we have some discretion over the time during work when we are not working. And so proactively planning in better breaks during the day, even just 2 10-minute breaks over the course of a day, but actively choosing what you're going to do to rejuvenate yourself during them can make a huge difference in people's happiness.
Yeah, I'm super guilty of the not taking breaks. I think anyone who has control of their own schedule and has more autonomy over how they spend the hours of their workday, especially if they love the work they do, can get sucked into to not taking breaks. And yet, we know that taking breaks can give us that break in our mental break that we need to be more productive and happier. And so I love that you included that as well, because taking breaks and rest is, I consider, a productivity tool. I think that's super important. I think one of my favorite concepts in this book, and you got me thinking about this period of time in a way that I hadn't previously thought about it, because I would have in past called it the witching hour, right? But you're talking about this after work time as the golden hours. And I think that that shift is so important. And I really loved all of the different things that you included in the book about what we can do to help us enjoy this, typically chaotic time between work and bed. Um, what are your favorite ones? I know there's a lot and we don't have necessarily all the time that I wish we did, but are there a few favorites? I'll tell you mine actually, if
Okay,
that's
what's
okay. I'm just
yours?
gonna
Yeah.
cut right in, Laura, and just tell you Toad Time
Toad
was my
time.
favorite thing. And I was like, this is fantastic. But walk us through the golden hours and why, like how you shifted your perspective around this time period.
Yeah, so if you think about the golden years, people say the golden years, that's the time for retirees after they're done with work and can enjoy family and leisure time. And we get a little miniature version of this every weekday evening when we have our golden hours after work, before bed. And this is time people can have for doing enjoyable things. But a lot of people, and I would include myself in this, tend to spend it unintentionally. It's just we're tired. It's hard to motivate ourselves to do anything. And I'm not even saying anything productive, but even anything like fun. But it's a lot of time to write off as unusable. I mean, in my time diary studies, a lot of people are done with work and work related activities before 6 p.m. A lot of people do not go to bed until 10 p.m. or later. So we're talking 4 or 5 hours. And that's, there are things that have to happen, but the have to happens generally don't take 5 hours. So we want to use some of this time for something fun. So I challenge people to just spend 30 minutes in the evening doing something intentional that is not, work, housework, or, the required physical care of family members. So you mentioned Toad Time. This is an acronym I have for time outside after dinner. And now that the weather is getting nicer, it's light later, at least in the northern hemisphere here, my kids like going outside after dinner. It feels like bonus time. And it's a great way to get them sort of off screens, get out active, doing things. But we're just, having fun in the yard, hanging out. It's very casual. But everyone feels better when they get fresh air, including the supervising adult. So I am a big fan of Toad Time as well. I also love doing puzzles. Puzzles is one of my favorite go-to golden hour intentions. I tend to have a 1,000 piece puzzle going at any given moment. It has to be the right kind of puzzle. I've become pickier about this as I do more of them. People sometimes give me puzzles, and the odds that it's what I want to do are low. I feel so bad about this. Like my husband gave me Van Gogh's Starry Night. That is a terrible, terrible puzzle. It is all blue. It is all blue and various shades of other things of the stars in it. No, no, no. I have a saying that the worse the art, the better the puzzle. Like you want a bookshelf with cats coming off of it. That is a good doable puzzle. So that's what I tend to be working on at any given moment.
I think that's fantastic. We have a family puzzle that we often will do it like around the holidays, but it tends to take over the dining table because we don't have another space for it. So we're all super motivated to get it done so we can like stop eating on top of puzzle pieces, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's this idea of effortful fun, right? These things, we don't reach for them first. We reach for our phones. We reach for devices. We sit down and watch TV as a default. But if we put a little effort into it, if we put a little, get past that initial friction when our brain is telling us, oh, we're too tired, we really do get a lot of benefit out of this effortful fun.
Absolutely. I mean, effortful fun is fun.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit of effort. So, one of my favorite sort of time management practices is to challenge yourself to do just a tiny bit of effortful fun before you do the effortless variety. So, if you find yourself picking up a phone, like see if you can put an e-reader on there, like the Kindle app, read an ebook for 3 minutes, and then you can go on a YouTube bender for the rest of the night if you want. But like the point is to do the effortful fun first, because a lot of the times you'll just keep going with it. Like you'll want to find out what happened in your book and you'll never make it over to YouTube, and probably that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is fantastic. We have a couple more pieces of the puzzle, and they're more mindset related. So, like the first one that I really loved was being open to serendipity. Talk to us about this because this feels so, like for me, it's like heartwarming. It's almost like I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like this is what life is. So, what does this mean? What's this concept?
So serendipity is wonderful things not actively sought for, right? And so one of the challenges is a lot of productivity is about saying no to more things. And that makes sense because, we don't want to have things filling our time that are not meaningful or enjoyable for ourselves and the people we care about. And yet, if you think about it, almost all new opportunities, new relationships, new adventures come out of saying yes to something. And it generally is yes to something that is not in your normal run of show. Because if you knew about it, you'd be doing it. Like if you knew somebody was going to be a wonderful friend for you, you would have already been reaching out to them. Like if you knew that a big break for your career was just going to happen by meeting with this other person, you would have been on the phone with them already. Like if you don't know what you don't know, and so you have to be willing to say yes to some things that you don't know how they will pan out in order to have these new opportunities come into your life. And so I think there are ways to be thoughtfully accessible. You can set boundaries. You can limit the time devoted to these take a chance yeses, but you don't want to build a wall around yourself because a wall keeps out bad things, but a wall also keeps out good things that don't have an explicit invitation. And a lot of wonderful opportunities don't have explicit invitations. They come to us because take a chance, put some work in, see where things go.
Mhm. We need to step out of our comfort zones, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think even like post-pandemic, we've become a lot more um, stuck in our ways or unwilling to go out into the world in the same way we used to. And I think it's a shame because you're right. You don't know what opportunity is right around the corner that is just waiting for you. If you say, yeah, give it a chance, just show up and see.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
never know. So try just
Yeah.
for a while, see how it goes.
Yes. And if you're listening and you encounter one of these serendipitous experiences, please write us and let us know. We would love to hear. This podcasting thing is so funny because we're talking to you and you're listening, but we don't get to hear your feedback. So if something has landed and you're like, oh my gosh, that point is great, please reach out to Laura and I and let us know because we want to know what are the pieces that are like hitting you?
And here's a
Um,
way that I leave myself open to serendipity, which is that I get email from anybody, everybody, whatever. Laura at lauravanderkam.com. Feel free to reach out. I check it. I, understand that email is the world's biggest time suck, but it is also the world's biggest opportunity. So I love to hear from people.
Yeah, and that is exactly what happened for you coming on this show today. I decided that I was just going to ask. I was just going to say, "Hey, Laura, I'm a big fan. Is there any way you'd like to come on my podcast?" And you said, "Yes, Jill, I will be there. Let's do this." And if I hadn't have reached out, you wouldn't have been on the show today. So,
Nope.
perfect example.
Exactly.
I want to also bring another number into the mix here because we've talked about 24 hours. We've talked about 168 hours. Now, let's talk about a bigger number, and it might feel like a scary number, but it's 8,760 hours. This is the number of hours in a year, and why is it important for us to know this number and sort of reframe our time to consider it?
I am a big fan of zooming out in general. Whenever life is feeling crunched, that is often because we are looking at it from a very limited perspective. We are looking at it from the perspective of one day or possibly even a stretch of a few days. But generally, the further we zoom out, the more life goes through, different phases where some are busier than others, but others are quieter. And we want to make sure we see the whole thing. Also, that many things that feel big in the moment are a very small chunk of time when you look at an entire year. So like an example, I was talking with somebody recently. They were thinking of taking like an art class, it'd be 2 hours on a Tuesday night. Now, busy person, family, job, that in the moment seems like, oh my gosh, my Tuesdays are gone. I have this commitment now. It's like taking all this time. Well, this class, 12 weeks, maybe 2 times a year, right? Fall semester, spring semester. So that is 24 hours in the spring, 24 hours in the fall. We have 48 hours in the course of 8,760 hours. Now, yes, there's a little bit of getting there and getting back, but even if you doubled it, which you're not, but like if you doubled it, like we're talking 96 hours, right? Like this is not a big chunk of 8,760 hours. And so even things that seem big in the moment are just sort of drops in the bucket of time when we zoom out far enough. And I hope that will give people a little bit of an incentive to consider taking on some of those things that in the moment might make you feel a little busier, but might really add a lot to your life.
Yeah. We definitely tend to have some time blindness around how much we can accomplish in the short term versus how much we can accomplish in the long term. And we always overestimate what we can get done in a day. Like our to-do list is always so frustrating that we never finish this to-do list. Like it's a surprise to us at the end of the day that there are still things to do. But then we don't think we can do this grand thing when we give ourselves a whole year. Of course we can, right? It's this new way to look at what we can actually accomplish. And I think that leads us perfectly into closing with this idea of being patient with ourselves and being patient with time because time is big enough to hold you.
Yeah, we have time for the things that are important to us, and time is sometimes the secret ingredient in lots of things we're doing in life. I mean, I sing in two choirs, and one of them in particular, the music we learn is often quite difficult. And I'm a serious but very much an amateur musician, and so I'm struggling to learn this. And I get the music, and I'm like, how am I ever going to learn this? But I can tell you, 6 weeks later, it will seem obvious to me, like that interval had to be what it was, that harmony had to be what it was. I know it so well, and what it is that time is working its magic. I'm putting in the time, but as I am putting in the time, the music is getting into my brain and getting into my sense of what it should be. And I couldn't do it at the beginning, but in 6 weeks I can. And having that in mind, I can be patient with myself at the beginning, knowing that in a few weeks you will be in a different place. And you can hold on to that image as you are struggling at the beginning, knowing it is going to be easier as time works its magic.
Yeah. And I love how you say that because I have a planner that I created and it's literally called Time Magic. Like it is such a cool, like if we just consider time in all of its glory, there are so many beautiful things, I think, about this construct that we have created and we live and we can view it in a really negative way. Like, do you know the term time confetti from Bridget Schulte?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I always sort of flip it, and I had her on the podcast too, and it was so cool to talk about this idea of like these small pockets of time and stealing our leisure and all that. And yet, I often will say, well, how can we look at this as an opportunity? Like, how can we use these pockets to get something done that, only take 5 minutes here and there and like be intentional about how we use this time? I just could talk to you forever and ever. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. Is there anything that we didn't get to cover that you feel is important to share for the listener or anything else that is top of mind for you today?
No, I think that's great. I mean, I do want to leave people with the thought that time is big enough for what matters to you, and complexity and chaos are not the same thing. That we have the power to be the ringmaster of our lives and create a wonderful show. Greatest show on earth. It's fun to
Yes.
watch a life being, built and performed and enjoyed in real time.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's so amazing. And if anyone is listening and wants to get their hands on a copy of Laura's new book, it is available. You can get it anywhere books are sold, but you also can visit Laura's website or check her on Instagram. Is there anywhere else you like to hang out online, or are those two places sort of the best?
That's kind of the best. Yeah, LinkedIn, Laura Vanderkam, I'm there posting as well. So check out any of those places.
Yeah, and if you're on Substack, Laura's got a Substack too.
I do.
So
It's
if you
called
prefer.
Vanderhacks. Little tips every day.
Yeah, and your newsletter's great. There's just so many ways to get into her world that are easy entry points, and I think the book is going to be the one that you should do, right now. So go out and buy the book before you leave. All of the links will be in the show notes. And until next week, keep on growing like a mother.